All right, everybody, welcome to another video. Today we've got a long-term review on the Scuf Impact controller. So I've had this controller for a little over 2 years, and about 6 months after I got it, I purchased the Astro C40, which ultimately was a great controller and I used it for a long time. But recently I've switched back to using the Scuff with my PlayStation 5, and I've actually been really loving this controller. So you've probably seen enough videos talking about all the different features, so I'm not going to go too much into detail on how different things work, but I'll just talk a little bit about what I like about the controller and what I think could be done better, and then ultimately what I'd love to see them do in a PlayStation 5 Scuf controller, which I think is kind of getting to the point where it's overdue. So a little quick rundown on the specific build that I have. Pretty much a fully loaded controller. I've got the domed thumbsticks. The Impact has the 4 paddles on the back, which I do have the remappable version. Hair triggers. Now, one of the things that happened with my controller early on, which turned out to be for the better after all, was the trigger stops actually broke off. There was a very minor fall and they're really flimsy and they broke off. Didn't really bug me because mine were really loose and they would spin around when I was using the controller, and it really bugged me because they would turn sideways and I would basically have no trigger action, and it really threw off my game. It always seemed to happen in kind of a high heat scenario. So when they broke off, these felt a million times better. Hair triggers are nice because you can dial them in so that it's an instantaneous response. However, if it's games like Call of Duty and other shooters, Scuf has added the digital click, so mouse like click. And if I was ordering a new controller, that's how I would spec it out, because I don't really use this for racing games, and to me that would be an ideal situation. So over 2 years, probably 2.5 years actually, controllers held up pretty well. Notice a little bit of the finish coming off here. This has actually got a little rough feeling, combination of maybe sweat from my hands and also wiping it off with like a microfiber towel, because it is a bit of a painted surface. I do have the older style, I think they called it like a military style grip on the back. Scuf's actually gone to a new, similar to what the Astro has, kind of rubberized coating, which again, if I was ordering a new controller, that's probably how I would spec it out. But overall, the controller's held up well. I haven't had any stick drift issues. Of course, this is just based off of a normal DualShock 4 controller and is modified by Scuf. So typical kind of quality that you would expect from Sony, although as with Sony controllers, you can run into stick drift issues. So something I try to do to hopefully kind of avoid that is, in these, they do kind of get a little bit of a white powderized plastic that happens on the normal DualShock as well. I try and wipe that off so it doesn't get into the analog sticks inside. And, you know, so far I've used this quite a bit, quite a few hours of gameplay, and I haven't had any issues. And I am used to getting stick drift issues because with my Astro C40, you know, I've had several sets of sticks. Now, I will say Astro was really good at covering those under warranty, so I don't really have any complaints about this controller. But it is something where I've used the controllers enough that if stick drift was going to be an absolute serious issue, I would have run into it. So, you know, what I like about the controller size-wise versus a normal DualShock, it fits much more comfortable. I remember when I first got it, it had a very, very premium feel to me. That's been a little bit minimized because the Astro, in comparison, has a much more premium feel, nicer rubberized coating. Buttons are more of a button versus the clicking paddles, which could be up to debate which is better. And then also in comparison, the new DualSense controller even still has a more premium feel than what the Scuf Impact does, at least to me. That doesn't bug me though. I still really love using this controller. Of course, with the PlayStation 5, I can't use this with new PlayStation 5 titles like Cold War unless I download the PS4 version, which I'm not going to. But for Warzone, which is what I play 90% of the time, it's still a PS4 game, so this works perfect, and basically will kind of bridge the gap. Hopefully, Scuf will make a version of the DualSense or maybe something that they fabricate on their own now that they're owned by Corsair. But overall, you know, still has a very premium feel. I've played around with different thumbsticks as well. So there's a whole variety of different thumbsticks that you can get. Longer ones, domed ones, concaved ones, obviously different colors as well. So that comes down to personal preference. For a long time, I ran a longer one on the right stick, but just because I switch back and forth to the DualSense for when I'm playing PS5 games, I found that this keeps it more consistent for me, so I have a very consistent feel. So that's how I've been running it. Domed ones, shorter. Again, that's going to come down to personal preference. Those change very easily. Basically, little key unlocks it, pops them off. I'm not going to do it right now, but that's very, very simple. As far as reprogramming the buttons, unlike the Astro, which you would typically use the software, there is a way of programming them without that. This is kind of a magnet idea, so it sticks to the back, and then you depress the button and press the paddle that you want to match, and it's ready to go. I pretty much have them set in a certain way that suits me best, and I've just kind of left them. But you never know what different game that you're going to get or start playing down the road, and I would highly recommend getting the reprogrammable buttons. Something else I would highly recommend if you do get a Scuf Impact is to get the Scuf braided cable, and the reason being is it's a very specific size that will plug in, and then you don't get any issues with the USB connection being the point that kind of holds it firm. So this is kind of encased around that, and it holds it nice and firm. Unfortunately, when same fall that broke both of my trigger stops, did bend this a little bit, but it's been working perfect, so haven't bothered replacing that. Another thing that I got when I ordered, it was Black Friday sale, and it came with a case. Now the case is literally just a little circle thing here, and that's all it is. It wasn't bad because it was included. Certainly nothing like the quality of the Astro case, but I believe that Scuf is getting better with that kind of stuff. So possibly their stuff right now will be a bit better. Ultimately, what I'd like to see moving into the DualSense controller is basically the same great things. I'd love to see 4 paddles on the back. I must admit I mostly use 2, but having a 4th one can be beneficial, and I know a lot of people like that. Adjustable thumbsticks. This I don't think is the best way with these anti-friction rings. They kind of warp over time, and I've had to flip them back and forth because they'd actually hold the stick in a certain spot. So maybe something like what the Xbox Elite controller does with magnetic ones would be a better option. I'm not sure how they would get around the haptic triggers. I personally don't care about them. If there's a way of getting digital click triggers, that would be best. If they were to do trigger stops, I much prefer the trigger stops on the Astro, where it's a little switch here that changes it. It's a much more solid design, and you never have any issues while you're playing. So I'd love to see them make a change like that. Overall, I actually really like the shape of the DualSense. For me and my hand size, it's very comfortable. I like the feel of the buttons, the D-pad. I really wouldn't change a whole lot. It's literally adding either buttons or paddles on the back, and keeping the same kind of shape, maybe some custom shells. And I would love to see now with Corsair owning them something a little bit better than the painted ones. If it happened to be, you know, actual solid plastic ones that are that color, to me that would be very beneficial. So overall, would I recommend purchasing a Scuf Impact? Certainly, if you're using a PlayStation 4 right now and you plan to stay on PlayStation 4 for a little while, it could be a great investment. If you play on PC, this is a great PC controller. So I would highly recommend it. If you are playing on PlayStation 5, I think the days of things like Warzone still being backwards compatibility are somewhat limited, so I couldn't really recommend it as a PlayStation 5 controller, unless you have some extra money to burn and you don't mind the fact that at any point, if they update that game, you may be limited to other PlayStation 4 titles. I think Scuff has decent resale, so you could always sell it to a PC player or somebody still on PS4 if that's the case. For me, I'm not going to replace this with anything with the digital triggers yet, but what I would do is wait till the PS5 Scuff comes out and then do something with that. So if you're lucky enough to have a PS5 already, that would be my recommendation. If you're looking to get into the pro controller market, don't worry about all the negative comments out there with Scuff. There's always going to be people complaining, especially in this industry. They have had good customer service in my experience. I don't see any reason not to support their product. And I think with Corsair owning the company now, it can only make the product better. So I would recommend it. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. I'm going to be doing more product reviews for PlayStation 5. I also do reviews for the Nintendo Switch, and there is a way of actually using this controller with the Nintendo Switch, which I'll cover in a future video, which is really cool to have the access to those back buttons. So subscribe if you like, and if you hit that thumbs up, really appreciate it. And till next time, bye-bye.